Hey, this is Allison at the River Center Branch Library, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a decoupage desk organizer. In your kit, you should have instructions, a black magazine holder, a piece of newspaper to protect your work surface, a container of white glue, a foam brush, spoon, several Q-tips, a cup, and a small piece of saran wrap. You will also need a pair of scissors, some paper towels, and optionally you may want to have some markers on hand for extra decorating. You'll also need some materials for your decoupage. So if you picked up your kit at the River Center Branch Library, you'll also have the option to pick some materials from our collection. So some of the type of things you can use to decoupage, and these are the things that are available at River Center for you, are tissue paper, old comic books, old manga, book pages, music pages, all from old books that are being recycled, maps, magazines, anything that can be upcycled, and a bunch of sheets of paper that have different backgrounds on them. Any type of paper will work for this. You can also use newspaper. You can even use other type of materials like fabric, yarn, string, ribbons, sequins, and almost anything you can think of that if you can glue it on and it will stick, you can use it for decoupage. Let's start by making our Mod Podge. Mod Podge is essentially 1 part water to 3 parts glue. So to make this mixture, you're going to start with 1 spoonful of water, which I've already got in my cup. So you can measure out with this spoon from your sink, put it in the cup, and now you're going to put 3 spoonfuls of glue into the cup. It doesn't have to be exact, and you can kind of doctor it up afterwards to try and get the correct consistency that will work for your Mod Podge. You'll have some glue left over, so you can put the lid back on and save that for later if you need to make a second batch. So stir it all together. And it should just be like watered down white glue. All right. So now you'll just take your piece of saran wrap and cover the lid, cover the top of it so that it doesn't dry out while we're not using it. The first thing to do is to design your decoupage. I've decided to go with a Harry Potter theme. So I have some old book pages that I'm going to have as the background. I was able to print out some pictures, which you can do also. You can print out $2 worth of free pages with your library card in color at any of the library locations. So I printed some pictures and cut them out. I also was able to find some pictures in magazines, some little owls. So I'm going to add those in, and I'm going to use some pieces of yarn and sequins. We're going to focus on doing one side of the magazine organizer at a time because we need to let the glue dry before we can go on to the other sides. So first, come up with your design for one side of it. So you can do this by just placing your items where you think you'll want them. I'm going to let these overhang a bit so I can glue them down on the sides. All right, so I've got the layout kind of how I want it. Now you're just going to take all of the layout and set it to the side. Let's get our Mod Podge out and also the newspaper to protect the surface. So go ahead and lay out your newspaper. And with decoupage, we are really doing layers. So I'm going to start with the first layer, which is my book pages. All right, so I've got my first layer arranged, and I see that this one is the lowest book page, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that one first. So in order to do that, get your Mod Podge out and your foam brush. Make sure it's all nice and stirred up still, and you're just going to get a little bit of Mod Podge onto the foam brush. And put a very light layer underneath where that book page will go, or your first layer. And then stick your book, your item on top. All right. And then just keep doing that until you get your first layer on. This one next. You don't want to put too much Mod Podge down because it'll start to wrinkle the pages. And just make sure you smooth it out as you put it down. If you miss a spot, go back underneath, just add a little bit more Mod Podge. So I've got my first layer on there. Just keep smoothing it out to make sure everything lays flat, and you're going to give it 15 to 20 minutes to dry. So while you're waiting for it to dry, you can keep going with cutting out more pictures or getting other sides ready to go. So I've waited about 15 or 20 minutes, and my Mod Podge is now dry enough to put the next layer on. So now I'm going to put some images that I've cut out on here. I'll go ahead and do the same thing where I arrange them first. I'm also going to be adding some sequins to this layer to just kind of make some of the images pop out a little bit more. So let's start with just a plain cutout. Get your Mod Podge out. Put a thin layer of Mod Podge around where you want your image to be. It's okay if it goes outside of the bounds of where the image is going to be, because it always dries clear. Arrange your image and smooth it down. Keep smoothing it. You may need to add a little bit more Mod Podge in certain places. Put too much, you can just kind of smooth it off and wipe it on your paper towel. All right. So to attach the sequins, you can use just your regular glue and a Q-tip. You want to make sure you have enough adhesive on there. So just go ahead and put a dollop of glue where you're going to want your sequins to go. And then stick your sequins in place. Now just make sure you keep smoothing your images down so that they stick, and let this dry for about another 15 to 20 minutes. You'll just keep repeating that same process on each side. So if you want to add yarn or string to any of your sides, this is how you'll do it. I'm going to cut the yarn to length. Get your Q-tip and your plain glue and draw directly onto the images, onto where you're going to want the yarn to go. And then you just place your yarn on top, making sure it is sticking to the glue. If you need to go back and add more glue underneath pieces of yarn, you can do that too. Just hold it down just long enough for it to stick, and then it'll dry the rest of the way on its own. Right, keep going with your decorations, and once you're satisfied with how it's designed, we'll go on to the next step. The final step is to coat the entire organizer with a final coat of Mod Podge, and this will seal in all of your images onto the organizer, and it will also provide a protective coat. So if you are almost out of Mod Podge, you may need to make another batch. You can use up the rest of the glue that you have left because this is the last step. So I've already made my final batch, and you're just going to use the foam brush to put a light coat over the entire container. If there's any pieces of your images that are sticking up a little bit, you can take this as an opportunity to glue them back down and make sure everything is secure. So once you're done covering your entire container, make sure you let it dry for the 15 to 20 minutes, and then you're done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and your new desk organizer.